Hello, and thanks for checking out this webinar presented by Generation On and Learning to Give. My name is Emily Rios, and I'm Senior Manager of Youth Leadership, and I'm joined here with the Director of Learning to Give, Betsy Paterson. We're so glad you're here with us.
Learn to Give is your go-to site for lesson plans that connect your academics and service through philanthropy education. Our vision is to prepare all youth through the schools with the skills, knowledge, and experience to be generous and participatory citizens in civil society.
And Generation On is the youth division of Points of Light, and we know that the world today, there's a lack of caring and empathy. There is an environment in crisis. There is a decreased sense of community and a deficiency in life skills, and we know that youth wants to help. They are passionate, they want to make a difference and speak out. And they have talent and skills, time and energy, ideas and idealism, and that we know that through engaging them in service, not only can we change the world of today with these fabulous youth leaders, but we know that youth will gain knowledge, experience, empathy, connections, and really grow to be great members of their communities.
When we engage youth in understanding their role in civil society, they gain knowledge about issues and how the system works. They practice a variety of ways to serve and learn what they like and are good at. These are important life skills. In addition, they develop empathy for others and make connection with diverse people and organizations in the community through their exploration. Best of all, young people learn that they are capable of making a difference.
What's so great about today's webinar, we're really going to be focusing about engaging youth on the topic of environment. And what's great about focusing on the environment in the month of April is that we have Earth Day. We can really take this time to look at how we are addressing issues around environment through all of these great opportunities of service learning. Just kind of like what Betsy just said, you know, we have an opportunity for youth to be inspired by others and what they're doing to really address issues head on, think about taking action to make the world a better place, and reflecting about how they grew through the process.
This is an interesting spring to be exploring themes for Earth Day, as our news is full of stories about contaminated water, careful use of resources, oil spills, international agreements about climate, and other environmental issues. It's a great time to connect student learning to real-world application. And through this theme, we can guide students to recognize that what they do matters. When we want to help you investigate, explore, and learn with your students to develop a culture of caring. The classroom is a great place to initiate service learning experiences. Students pictured in this middle school researched decomposition rates of different materials. Their teacher gave them guidance as they investigated the issue using academic and process skills. And the students collected trash and divided it up, charted it, and then presented their results, and ended up starting a no plastics campaign at school.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love, you know, classrooms and groups of youth coming together to take action on an issue that they are passionate about. And what I love about this too is not only is there a classroom setting where they're coming together as a team, but teams can happen near or far. Our Generation On Youth Advisory Board for the month of April and specifically launching on Earth Day, April 22nd, they are going to spend a week individually doing beautification projects in their local communities. We've got 15 great youth advocates all across the United States. So they're doing those beautification projects in their local communities kind of individually, but bringing along fellow friends for the ride to take action, and also looking at doing some hours of energy reduction. So even though just one person, you know, it's like, well, what kind of difference am I making? You're making a huge difference because it's part of a bigger plan, a bigger process. So I love that our Youth Advisory Council are really working individually to make a difference, but collectively really making their mark.
And then don't they share their projects for anybody to take a look at and copy?
They absolutely do, Betsy. We are always looking at ways to share great inspirational stories from young people so that others can, get ideas or just get inspired and take it in another direction, add their own personal spin on it. But we absolutely do share those stories.
So there are different things we take in mind. In the next slide, you'll see we start with learning and move to act and reflect. We start with learning and keep the learning going throughout the process. Learning to Give has hundreds of lessons to incorporate academic instruction into service action. And we ask you to involve your kids in determining the action when they understand the issues and the needs to the learning. And Generation On has fantastic kid-centered fact sheets to get them up to speed really quickly on those issues. Both websites have models of practice and stories to give you ideas.
And once young people are learning about the issue and they're learning about the service that they can that they can engage in. The next part is really acting, right? We want to support youth as they act to address those issues through service. And as Betsy said earlier, not only do we share the stories of young people, but we share them because we want others to take action with them, by being inspired by them. And really finally challenging youth to reflect on how their service made a difference not only in their communities, but really on themselves as well. What did they learn through the process? How did they grow in giving back to their community? And it's important as we talk about service and action and giving back to communities that we think about the different types of ways that young people can engage. So we have direct service, and that's working directly for or with people who benefit from their service. So it's, myself showing up with my friends or my family, and we're going to go do a beach cleanup or a river cleanup. I show up, I give my time, I look back, and I can see that I made a difference. The beach is clean, the river is now clean. I directly impacted that. Or I went to a homeless shelter and I worked, to cut up fruits and vegetables. I made a great soup and I got to serve it to others. It's that direct contact. There's also indirect action and service. Potentially, I show up and I pack different snack packs, or I do all of this work kind of behind the scenes. I might not necessarily be upfront and personal with those that are benefiting from my service, but I'm definitely working behind the scenes and contributing to it. And then we also have advocacy, which is really taking that next step and saying, okay, how do we want to actually change policy to make a difference on these issues? Who can I talk to, even in my local government, my state government, my national government, right? It's all those different ways that we become advocates for an issue. And finally, research, really understanding the issue, the social issue that we want to address. And this is always one that I think is hard to give a really good example, but I'm so happy that Betsy has a great example about, what research looks like for youth.
Yeah, so I met a teacher in Chicago who did an amazing service learning project at his urban school. So the entry point for their project was a question about a vacant lot near the school vicinity. They heard that the lot was contaminated, so the students tested the soil to determine what the toxins were that were present. Then they investigated how to draw that toxin out of the soil, and they learned that they could plant a certain type of tobacco plant. So they communicated their findings and proposal in a presentation to the city council. And this was a service they did for their community to make a difference. I wonder how that experience might have impacted those kids going forward. I suspect that they now as adults feel they have the skills to participate in other community government issues in the future. Their genuine research really empowered them intellectually and emotionally to move forward with that skill.
And their research probably also helped them to become even really good advocates.
Yeah.
When you were telling that story, that's another thing I thought of through that research process and understanding that and working even with their local government. I mean, what a great way to kind of learn about that process and become an advocate as they're going through it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
What a great
Yeah.
example. I love that.
And I'm just thinking now it was also direct service. That was an example of direct service and advocacy and research.
Oh, man. 3 out of 4.
So in this process, we start with a lesson plan that gets kids thinking about service and issues. So they might have a lesson that defines stewardship for the environment or defines the watershed and helps students understand that we all have responsibility for caring for the earth. As you are taking action about trees or farming or pollution, you may include lesson plans that involve reading, writing, math, and geography. A lesson plan may send your students to primary sources about the Dust Bowl or to listen to a song about paving paradise. Learning to Give has hundreds of lesson plans to incorporate content and process skills and knowledge through the whole service learning process. The investigation stage of service learning is a time to dive into content and learn about the environmental issues, resources, as well as the interests of your students. We've listed here some environmental issues that you can dive into for Earth Day. I wonder what will spark your students' interest. I wonder which one of these fit what you already have to teach. Do you have some local nonprofit, government, or commercial resources related to one of these issues? I wonder what projects might arise out of one of these. Maybe your students will go to the local hiking ground and pull up invasive species, or maybe they'll engage some second graders in getting outside and playing in nature instead of being on their devices. So here's just a list to get you thinking.
So as we kind of think about the environmental issues that our students, that our youth, that our teens, that our kids might want to take action on, I want to make sure people are thinking through this step of community mapping. Community mapping for me is really working with your community and not at it. And that can make a big difference on the success of a service project, on a take action project, because we want to make sure that we're giving back in a really meaningful way. So, you know, why should we go through this process? Why is this something that we should do? Well, community mapping helps us identify resources. It helps us really analyze the real needs of a social issue, and it helps us meet potential experts or zero in on people that we could call upon to be partners in a project. And there's lots of ways that you can do this. We're going to actually show you one of the ways that we do it here at Generation On, but you don't have to do it that way. You could go for a walk. You could take your students out, ask them to document what do they see that bothers them. Is the side cracked? Is there tons of litter everywhere? Are there vacant lots, right? Are there things that, you know, we look at and we see and we don't like it? You could also go on a virtual walk, you know, pull up Google Maps, go through and do the same kind of thing, but do it in a virtual way. It also, you can have your youth list out resources and categorize those. You can ask those questions, which ones of things that bother you relate back to the environment. Maybe it's that vacant lot. Maybe it is litter. Maybe it's that there's no trees anywhere. It's just all concrete. There's nothing really beautiful about the space. And it's really about connecting and collaborating to address these issues. So now I just want to take a quick pause. We're going to jump out of our PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to show you how we do community mapping here at Generation On. So this activity actually comes from our signature youth development program called Go Lead, and I'll get a chance to talk about Go Lead a little bit later. But we do community mapping as a tree. And before I kind of go down to show you the issue on my tree trunk, I do want to just kind of draw your eyes to this great key vocabulary square that we have. It kind of helps us to talk about what are the definitions that we're going to be using through this exercise. So it's good to just kind of have that there to go through. You know, our community is really people with common interests. Our community assets are resources that have the potential to improve the quality of life in our communities. Association could be a group of individuals united around a common goal, and institutions are really established organizations designed to benefit the overall community. So those are just some nice little words that you can use. But when we do our community mapping with the tree, we're going to put the social issue that we are interested in. So for this demonstration, you know, thinking about the environment and thinking about things that really just personally bother me. I live in New York City, so litter is something that I come across every day. So that's a social issue around the environment that's important to Emily, is this litter. So we put that into our tree trunk, and then we're going to go up to the green, the tree, the branches, the leaves, and we're going to think about what effects. When litter happens, what happens because of that? So a couple of things that I just came up with, just thinking about it even on my morning walks to work and to home, is that, you know, litter can make the streets look really uncared for and dirty. There's the potential for litter to be, you know, washed down storm drains, and that eventually gets into our rivers, our lakes, even our oceans, which is a problem. Animals could mistake it for food. They could get sick, you know, or it could even, especially given that I live in New York City, it could encourage pest populations to continue to grow, rats and pigeons, you know, insects, cockroaches. Those populations could really even continue to grow. So those are just some of the ones that to me instantly came into my head when I think about the effects of littering. And then we're going to go down underneath the soil. We're going to start looking at the root causes of an issue. So why are the reasons why littering happens? And again, these are just some of the ones that quickly popped into my head. But, you know, attitudes and behavior. You know, if I don't think it matters, what does it matter if I drop my coffee cup on the street? You know, it could be my attitude. It could be just something that I've been doing for a really long time. It's a bad habit. And I, you know, don't really care about it. It could be not enforcing littering laws or, you know, rules. There's a lot of littering laws in place, but, you know, does anybody do anything about that? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it really is just a lack of trash cans or receptacles. You know, I'm walking down the street, I've been holding this coffee cup for forever and there's nowhere to throw it away, so I throw it on the ground. So there's lots of reasons, but these are just the ones that kind of popped into my head very quickly. And then we think about bird's eye view. Who are the people that really get a good view of this issue? You know, what are these institutions potentially that could help us be an expert and partner with us to address the issue of littering? So again, ones that I thought up really quickly are maybe recycling companies. You know, maybe it is waste management. It could be the city government who is kind of looking at enforcing any littering laws in place. Are there littering laws in place? You know, that would be an interesting question to ask city government. Maybe something along parks and recreation. You know, how can we make our streets feel cleaner? You know, maybe they have some insight on that. Maybe they have good wisdom to share because they've managed to make the parks be really clean. So these are just a couple of things that you can do to really start thinking, partner with to get support, really trying to encourage your projects to address the root cause of the issue. And this also, I think, is really a good part of that learning phase and really researching and understanding the issue more fully. Betsy, did you have anything to add?
I love that you're getting at the root causes. That's such an important thing, that we're not just having kids punch time clock here and put in their service. We're asking them to really analyze what's really happening and what can we do about the real issue to make a real difference.
I love that. All right, now we're going to jump back over to our PowerPoint. Oh, there you go. And we're just waiting for the screen to pop up. There we go. So thinking along these lines of what those environmental issues are, and there's a lot of them, looking at doing community mapping to address that root cause of the issue. You know, Generation On has lots of different project ideas. It goes back to really wanting to inspire youth to take action in their communities and really tell stories of what kids and teens are doing. So it is really a lot about that. Letting these ideas be a jumping off point. So we are really focusing on environmental issues the entire month of April. And here's just a couple, lots more on generationon.org. But you know, we do have Earth Day action project ideas, you know, planting trees, how you can really kind of activate around Earth Day. We have, you know, Take Back the Tap, looking at the water issues, you know, what happens when we don't conserve our water? How can you conserve your water better? Thinking about showers, thinking about when you brush your teeth, thinking about cooking, all of that really connecting people to think about water conservation. Park cleanups, you know, beach cleanups, river cleanups, all the different ways that you can kind of take action and really clean up a space and really make it much more beautiful and really encourage people to take part in those green spaces. Reusable bags, you know, how can we reduce plastic? So looking at different crafts and creative ways to make reusable bags. But an issue that we're really excited to talk about, and it's actually our project of the month, is we know that there's a lot of young people that are interested in the issues surrounding Flint, Michigan. So it is our project of the month, writing letters to your government officials and asking them to take action. So it is kind of looking at the issue of advocacy and how kids really want to address this issue. So we have this all on the website. It really lets you know what you're doing, why it matters. It gives you samples of how you can take a template and really customize it for your individual government official. There's lots of different links. And I should mention that really all of our projects kind of focus around this idea of what you're doing, why it matters, and some facts about the issue, and using it as a jumping off point. So we're really excited to kind of facilitate a way for kids to take action on this issue that is really kind of front and center in their mind because they're hearing so much about it, and we're giving them a way to take action.
Learning to Give is also featuring Flint with lesson plans related to the Flint crisis. And to find these resources on the learningtogive.org website, along the top there's a menu called Get Started, and the top item there is called Teach One. And we change the Teach One theme regularly, and right now it's about Flint and the environment. And then also below that you can see the menu that says Plan Giving Instruction. That's a calendar, and under April you'll find these Flint and environment lesson plans. So we want to show you now a brainstorming tool to give you an idea of one way to narrow down your focus for learning and find environmental lesson plans on the Learning to Give site, as well as to think of project ideas for Generation On. So think about what you want your students to know and be able to do related to the environment. And I broke down the areas of learning into 4 categories or entry points of service learning. Your brainstorm ideas will look different than this list. Yours will be more detailed and personal. So over on the left, the academic goals may be standards-based or process goals, like writing. The philanthropy themes are what you want your students to learn about being in community with one another in the world. Another entry point is the community resource that you identified in your community mapping activity. And finally, sometimes we enter service learning already knowing the project we want to do. But sometimes the project idea arises through the lessons and activities. So then you take these brainstormed ideas that you've created around these 4 areas, and in the next slide, we show you how to enter these into the database to find a specific lesson plan. So Emily, will you show the next slide? If you go to the learningtogive.org site and click that green button on the top, search lesson plans, you'll come to this page, find a lesson. Use one of the brainstorm terms from the previous brainstorm to find potential lessons to guide your instruction in service learning. We have over 1,700 lesson plans on the site for you to choose from. So explore around and find a lesson that suits you. I'm just going to show you a few snapshots from the website. Here's a lesson plan for middle school students that uses critical thinking to analyze cases of animal cruelty. So in this lesson, they learned the skills of advocacy. Go ahead and switch to the next one. In this middle school lesson, they learn about water filtration and the need to sustain water quality. This is a great one for Flint. A service project idea for students might be to educate people on the environmental cost of bottled water. In the next one I'm going to show you, this is a 3rd through 5th grade lesson plan. The students use math skills to chart trash collection. They also learn about how different sectors, the government, nonprofit, and business sectors, respond to cleaning up pollution. So in this one, the students might write letters to state legislators to ask for a law to change to charge customers for using bags at the grocery store. And the next one is a kindergarten through 2nd grade lesson plan that uses literature as inspiration to get students thinking creatively about recycling and reusing. And this service involves an art exhibit where they provide education about recycling. And the next slide will show you that at the bottom of each lesson plan on the site, you can find out what academic standards are aligned to that lesson. You may select your state or the Common Core state standards and then your grade level or subject to see a drawdown of what standards are aligned. And then also we show what philanthropy themes are taught in the lesson here. And on the next slide, after you have taught some lessons, built some knowledge, developed some connections to community resources, and learned some skills of empathy and advocacy, now the students are ready to plan a project. We'll give you an idea here. You can guide your students, for your students to take the responsibility for making a plan and holding one another accountable. So here's one brainstorming technique. To make a specific service learning action plan. Students narrow down what they have investigated until they come to a consensus about what project they want to do. And that might take a few sessions. As part of their planning, they determine whether they need funding. So part of the plan may include holding a fundraiser. On a large planning board, you and the students write on sticky notes all of the elements of the service learning project. And then they order them in a timeline. As you ask the students to break down the project into all its steps, and sometimes you have to say, okay, now we have to break this one down into more steps, and we have to break this one down into more steps. So you're really just down to each element on its own sticky note. So one sticky note might say, call the director of the Parks Department. Another might say, determine all the supplies needed for cleanup day. Borrow rakes and shovels. Have someone drop off shredded bark. Read about handling local invasive species. Raise money for transportation costs. And again, that might have to be broken down into several steps. After your students have brainstormed all the incremental steps, use a different color sticky note to assign student names to the steps, and then put them in timeline order and assign dates. And then each day, your group gathers and visits this planning board, looks at the timeline where they should be, and they hold each other accountable. You assign a student to take charge of leading the board that day, and they hold each other accountable for the tasks and timing. You can even have discussions of what do we do if somebody doesn't do their part? And it's okay to change and add to the planning board as you go. So that's one idea for putting the kids into the responsibility role for the project.
And this is actually one of my favorite ways to kind of talk about the planning period, because it does really break everything down into very, you know, sometimes I think youth have such great ideas and they have such great energy, but it's important to help them get very detail oriented, and I think that this is a great way to do that. I also love this because it helps keep people accountable, especially by assigning people to certain roles. It's that positive peer pressure. You know, it's the positive of, you know, I'm in charge of this and Betsy's in charge of that, and we're all working together and we each have a role to play.
Yeah, and it's not the teacher reminding them, it's the board
Yes.
is telling them that you have to do this.
Yeah, yes. And I think, you know, another important thing to think about, and we said it a little earlier, is thinking about the reflection aspect. You know, and I think this is a really great little chart that kind of looks at reflection with different learning styles. And I think that that's really great because reflection happens differently for everyone, depending, and even personality, not only learning the way that somebody learns, but also a little bit of their personality. So I love this chart because it helps me keep in mind to offer a reflection activity for every type of personality and every type of learner. So, you know, someone who has that language, who really enjoys learning with words, you know, for them, essay, you know, keeping an essay or a journal is a great way for them to kind of reflect on their process. People that are musical, they like to learn through rhythm and melody. They can create a song. People that are, you know, like to talk with others, which is my favorite way. I love to talk with others. You know, a group discussion is going to be a great place for someone who really enjoys that, to talk with one another. You know, you can also look at people that are learning by sight and with pictures. They can do a photography collage. There's just so many different ways that you can be reflective, and offering all of these different ways to be reflective. You know, letting people even assign themselves, you know, the discussion group's meeting over here, or you can grab your journal, find a corner, and take a little bit of time. And letting your students and letting your youth kind of pick and choose the reflective path that works best for them. Because it's important to take that pause and think about, what did we do? How did we do it? What did I learn? How did I change? That's an important step.
We know that you'll find that the more you give students responsibility and a chance to reflect in real life situations, the more they recognize that they are capable of being competent and contributing citizens. We're showing them a path to making the world a better place as they learn and improving their engagement and skills for life.
And that's so true. I think that that's such beautiful sentiment, Betsy, as you were saying that. You know, and another thing to think about too is that as we're talking about taking action, giving back, you know, one way that you can do that is through Generation On clubs, or even any group of students or youth that are coming together on a semi-regular basis to do community service. You can affiliate and become a Generation Clubs. We have lots of great resources and project ideas, lots of different things available to you for completely free. You know, so definitely check out generationon.org to learn more if you think that this might be something you're interested in. And as earlier I mentioned, when we were going through our community mapping tree, I mentioned that that is actually an activity from our Go Lead program. Go Lead is for youth, but we actually do a 2-day training for youth development professionals. So that's you can be an educator, you can work with a nonprofit that works with youth, and really going through a 2-day training to teach you about how to make sustainable difference through a community project, addressing the root cause of an issue. It's a lot of fun. If you're interested, again, check out generationon.org. Lots of great information there. We're actually getting ready to do our next training in Detroit, Michigan, June 25th and 26th, right before the Service Unites conference there with Points of Light. So lots of resources available to you. And we just want to say thanks for checking out this webinar, and we hope that the information has provided lots of really good ideas, thinking about how you can work with your group to take action on environmental issues for the month of April and beyond. Of course, you don't have to limit giving back in an environmental way just the month of April. You can do it year-round. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Emily Rios, Senior Manager of Youth Leadership.
And this is Betsy Peterson, Director of Learning to Give, and we'd love to hear your stories of service for Earth Day.
Thanks, everyone.